Welcome to the Empowered Birth series, where I go deep into everything that you need to know to plan and get your true natural birth. And today we're going to go into the three things that really sabotage and mess with your flow when it comes to your true natural birth, particularly in your early stages of labor, even before labor, and definitely during your active labor. In fact, a lot of things that happen during your labor in a typical natural birth within the medical system is what sabotages your natural birth and leads to it being more painful, more traumatic. You can even possibly end up crumbling under the pressure, getting the epidural. You might end up agreeing to have your waters broken. You might end up agreeing to those vaginal exams that you really don't want. More on that later. And you might even end up getting a C-section. If this is before labor begins, you could even end up getting tricked into an induction. So this masterclass is basically going to help you understand what things sabotage a true natural birth. I'm going to be sharing a story of my own experience within the hospital system having a true natural birth and what I learned and how I did things differently with my home birth and how I teach my clients how to have that beautiful natural birth experience, even if they do end up going to the hospital. So if you've been following with this series for a while, then you know that I'm going deep into the 26 things that you need to know to plan and get your true natural birth. Go back and watch the first video of this series. It's inside of the playlist on True Natural Birth and the Empowered Birth Masterclasses in the 26 things that you need to know. And if you want the full list, you just go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/freebies. Or if you'd prefer to learn the entire Empowered Birth method and you'd like to learn more about true natural birth itself, then go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide. This is your ultimate guide to planning and getting your true natural birth with the Empowered Birth method. I lay it all out for you. I also tell you more about the other resources on the website, empoweringmomsbirth.com, because I am committed to you having an empowered birth, whether you work with me or not, whether you get any of my courses or any of my books. The Empowered Birth method is basically this. You aim for a true natural birth and you pull back only as much as needed. But sometimes when you're going with the flow of the medical system, you end up not following your body's unique process, and that's when true natural birth gets derailed. So I'm going to go into those three things that you need to know. I'm going to tell you how to avoid them. And if you find this valuable, all I ask is that you like, share, and subscribe to this channel, pay it forward, pass this on to other moms who need it, because, one of the things that is most disheartening is when moms come to me and they're like, I tried to have a natural birth, but my body didn't dilate, or it was too painful, or I didn't follow the typical textbook. I was in labor for several days, or labor was stopping and starting and it never actually kicked into gear. And this is actually why. So I'm going to tell you the reasons why this happened. So first of all, what I'm going to say is that I learned this firsthand when I was pregnant with my first baby, and I really learned it with my second. If you know my story from your empowered birth, then you know that as a first-time mom, I had decided that I wanted to have a completely natural birth. I didn't want anybody to touch me. And in fact, in order to avoid the hospital completely, I planned a home birth. I ended up getting tricked along the way. I didn't know all of my rights. I didn't yet know what games were being played at the higher levels within the medical system. I didn't know about what our birth culture was perpetuating. And even when I saw it, when I started to see it, because I have a background in psychology, there was nothing I could do because I didn't yet know all of the pieces to be able to stand up for myself. But with the Empowered Birth method, I give you all of that. So if you don't yet know who I am and you have just found this video, you've just stumbled upon it, I just want to let you know that part of these masterclasses is that I take a topic of interest, or I take something that's already been on my website, maybe in one of my little freebie guides, maybe it's just a little piece of information that a mom asked me a question about and it sparks my inspiration. And then I go deeper with that. So I can go 10 layers deep with everything that I'm teaching you today. If you have any questions, you can put them inside of the comments of the video, or better yet, email me, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. And either myself or one of my team members will get back to you within 3 to 5 business days if you are not in the Empowered Birth community, and 1 to 2 business days if you are already within the Empowered Birth community. And to get into the Empowered Birth community, you can learn more about that just by going to empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide. Okay, so let's dive in to those 3 things. And as I said, I'm going to be telling you a story with that. So first, before I get into this, I'm going to give you an analogy here. And the fact is that birth is also sexual, and we forget that. So you need to think, first of all, what is it like when you are having sex with your partner and you're wanting to have a really good explosive orgasm? The same energy that puts the baby in is what's going to get the baby out. So if you're thinking about your sex life and you're thinking about what allows you to have that big O, that is the same energy that you're really going to need to be able to birth effectively and to follow your body's natural process. The reason for that is that the same hormones that allow you to have the orgasm, such as oxytocin, are also present in higher numbers during your birth. This also allows you to have a more painless experience because those endorphins come up. Think about if you're trying to have sex and you're not well lubricated, you're not aroused, and maybe that slap or that position that you're doing or that move that your partner's doing that sometimes feels good doesn't feel good in that moment. You're like, why doesn't this feel good? Like, normally I like this. Well, it's because you're not turned on enough. In fact, there's a course that I was going through. It's called Oh My God, Yes. It's really good. And it explains about how when you're at different stages of your arousal, certain things feel better. Well, the same thing with your birth. If you're following a physiological process, then you need to understand that there are stages. However, things can distract from those stages. It's the same thing as having the arousal stage and then the plateau, and you get to that point where you're going to have the big O. Well, the same thing is happening with your birth. It's just a little bit different, but your uterus is still doing work. Your body is still getting ready. And this is how women are able to have orgasmic births. As you can see from behind me, there's actually a book in my collection that says Orgasmic Birth. It's by Deborah Pascali Bonero and Elizabeth Davis. I highly recommend it. There's actually some information on how to have an orgasmic birth, and she has a video as well. So if you go to her website, I think you can just go in and put your name and email and you can sign up and you can get that video. I think it's a free thing. I might have paid for it, I might have not. But either way, it's highly worth the investment, even if it's just an email or even if it's like maybe a couple dollars or something like that to go and get that, because it will really help you shift your mindset on what is possible in birth. I also did an interview with a friend of mine way back in 2021 when I was first starting to work with clients on how to use the empowered birth method. And it's all about how birth and sex ties in. It's with Michelle Short. Go and check the playlist for that. It's in the interview section with my Empowered Mom Circle, and we go deep into what you really need to know about birth and sex. But this ties again into why you don't want these 3 things that are going to sabotage your natural birth. So the reason why is, again, because it interrupts your oxytocin, it makes things more painful, it slows things down, it may even lead to your labor stalling, and this happened to me. And when I recognized that these things were causing problems, that's when I turned it around. My daughter had been a stop and start labor at home. And then once I fixed these 3 things, suddenly I was going into labor and it was like a 5-hour labor where I'm even sitting in the pool and I'm like, I'm bored. There's nothing that really seems to be happening. I think when my partner gets back from the store, I'm just going to go to bed. I'm going to take a gravel and I'm going to go to bed. She's probably not coming until the morning, maybe not even the afternoon. Like, things are really slow. And then I had the mother of all contractions, which wasn't really painful. It was just a lot of pressure. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like there's so much pressure coming down right now, and I don't like this. And labor must be getting going. I must be in active labor. What was I thinking having a home birth? I wish I had the gas and air. And then all of a sudden, at the peak of that intensity, suddenly a jet of water shot out and hit my clitoris. And I'm like, holy crap, like, what the hell? And then I'm like, I guess my water just popped. And my partner said, oh, you popped the pool? And I'm like, no, my water broke. And he's like, huh? And I'm like, my waters. And he's like, oh, do I need to call the midwife? And I'm like, just a second, because I didn't want anybody in my space. I didn't want anybody touching me. And I'd had a stop and start labor where it had stalled out. And my midwife had basically said, look, if labor starts up again and you call me, I'm going to have to come assess you to see where you're at. And if you're not far enough along, I'm going to have to transfer you. So I wanted to make sure that my baby was really coming, because I decided in that moment, you can go and read the entire chapter inside of Your Empowered Birth. I also have this in the playlist, but long story short was I'm not going back to the hospital. That traumatized me. I'm not going to have any interventions. You are not messing with my home birth plans. I understand that you have liability issues, but if I don't call you, then you don't have to worry. And there's a plausible deniability. If you want to know more about that, though, this is a good segue to just let you know that I have a birth advocacy report that I've written up, and it's inside my Empowered Birth Toolkit. It's sometimes also a freebie in other toolkits as well, but the Empowered Birth Toolkit, basically I put things in and I take things out. It's an ever-evolving resource where I rotate the resources that are in there. So sometimes you get modules from my paid program, Your Empowered Birth Academy. Sometimes you get little freebie extras that one of my Empowered Moms Circle members has given me to give to those members of the Empowered Birth community. And sometimes it's just something I'm working on. I'm like, hey, I just created this free workbook and it's only available inside this toolkit. And here you go, Empowered Birth community members. So all you have to do is go learn more about the Empowered Birth method. Go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide. There is a button within that start guide that will take you to the Empowered Birth Toolkit. You can sign up. You can get that free resource that, as I said, it's a Google Drive, and this birth advocacy report is in there. So basically what I was doing is I'm like, okay, my midwife has this fear, this liability, this restriction, and I found the loophole and I used that. And what happened is my baby was almost on the way out. Like I felt her head. And I'm like, oh, that's what that pressure was. And then my uterus just started pushing. And I recognized, oh, I don't have to push. I just need to pant and breathe the baby out. And it was really quick. Like my waters broke, and within 10 minutes, my daughter was out. So if you're thinking, oh, your waters broke and then you had a longer labor, no, I was done. So I had a very painless labor. And the reason is because I got rid of these three things during my labor process that allowed me to have that true natural birth experience and be able to follow my own physiological process, my own flow. So you ready to hear what those three things are? Okay, so number one is a chaotic environment. If you are too busy trying to worry about all of the mess that's in your area, or if you're in the hospital, there's nurses coming in and out of the room, they're flicking on the lights, they're interrupting you, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of talk. You can't get into your mammalian brain that allows you to tune into your body. Think about this if you're having sex with your partner again. If you are trying to have sex with your partner and all of a sudden you're hearing noises from the neighbors next door and they're going to town, or they're fighting, or maybe your kids, if you have other kids, they're doing something and you hear a loud crash. You're trying to get in the moment with your partner and you're trying to feel that orgasm, but suddenly you hear a loud crash. And you're like, what was that? It takes you right out of it, right? You're no longer in that aroused state. Now you're hypervigilant. Now you're like What was that noise? And it's harder for you to get back into that mood. Or maybe you're in a bedroom with your partner and there's something gross that is in that room, and you're like, what is that smell? You can't get into your body when you're smelling something gross. This is why there's a lot of guys out there. It's like if you go to their apartment, you're like, oh my gosh, like think back to the early days. Like if you were in college and you had one of those guys that's like come over and then you see their place and you're like, yeah, this is not happening. Like, no, bye boy. Like that idea. When you're thinking about that, like if you're you're in that space and there's like crap all over the bed, like maybe your partner left their socks around, and it's like this space is not conducive to you being able to have an orgasm. This is why, again, we set the mood, right? We want to set up that space for that beautiful and magical experience with our partner and connect. And, the more you set the mood, the more it feels good, right? So you want dim lights, you want the candles, you want quiet, soothing music, and you don't want people filtering in and out of your space and being all chaotic, right? So the same thing like with your birth, this is why a lot of moms, especially home birth moms, they're setting up their birth space ahead of time. They usually have a pool or they have other comfort items around them. They're setting up the candles, they're setting up the little tea lights. And this, in fact, is what I did. When I went to the hospital, I needed to have my playlist. So I had my ocean playlist and I had that set up ahead of time. I also chose, instead of being in the hospital room, I chose to be in the bathroom. And the bathroom lights were all off. So they had to basically be in the bathroom, and I was in the tub. And I can just tell you right now, the tub was not that great. I prefer a pool. If it's not a birthing tub, it's not going to be as comfortable as a pool. I can tell you that right now from having had both experiences, both laboring in a tub at the hospital and laboring in a birth pool. I much prefer the birth pool. Anyway, if you want to know more about that, you can always ask me questions about water birth because it's one of my favorite topics. So you're getting into that space and you're planning for your environment to be that nice, calming, soothing environment, not chaotic. If you've got other kids wandering around, you need to have somebody who's going to look after those kids. Because if you don't have somebody looking after those kids, or at least know that those kids are well taken care of, that in itself is going to be chaotic. Now, I'm also going to mention here that during my labor with my daughter, my son was home because I felt actually more comfortable having him with me. However, I also had a doula, and my doula was not really there for me as much as she was there for my son. The reason for this is because I like a hands-off labor. So my doula was showing my son how to roll the water bottle onto my back. She was the one who was suggesting my son play with his little iPad or play with the toys, or she was talking to him, and I was laboring on the birth ball. By the time my labor actually kick-started the next day, it was evening. My son had his dinner, he went to bed, and I was laboring. And by that point, it was fine. But earlier, when he was with me, I was making the noises and I'm saying, okay, sing with mommy. And that actually helped me to have my son's presence. So it's not so much don't have kids at the birth. It's how are the kids going to respond, and plan ahead for that if you do want to have them in your presence because it makes you feel more comfortable. Make sure that there's somebody to support them and make sure that it's not affecting your flow. Always have a backup plan in place for if you're like, I thought I wanted my kids there, but it's just too chaotic right now and I need them to be out of this space, and we'll call them back later. Because you can do that. It's your birth. You don't have to have that. And as for the nurses, if you have a doula and your partner, they can run interference to get the nurses to be quieter, to get the nurse to not talk to you during your labor. and to be like, she'll let you know if she wants you to do any hands-on stuff. Because if you're having a true natural birth, you want it to be hands-off. Because this leads into the next one, which is second guessing and overthinking. So other people in your space can really affect what's going on for you internally. You can sense that energy. Think about it if you're having sex with your partner and you can recognize that he is thinking about something else other than you. He's not with you. Now suddenly you're feeling like he's not even present. You're starting to overthink. Does he even want me? Like, what is he thinking about? You get into that space and you're like, is it me? Is it my stomach? Is it like my thighs? Like, what is it? And you kind of start to wonder about other things. Maybe your partner wanted to have sex, but you weren't in the mood and you can't decompress because everything else is chaotic right now. Sometimes it's as simple as like, I honestly can't think about getting into my body right now because there's too much to do. And I've got this mental load and this grocery list of things that need to be done. And when was the last time we washed these sheets? And oh my gosh, like, what are we going to do for dinner? Like, we haven't even worried about dinner. Like, you're freaking out about all these things. Now, in contrast, if your partner had said to you, baby, I have taken care of dinner. I've taken care of a babysitter for the kids. I've taken care of the house. The house is completely clean. And we have nothing else that we have to do from now until tomorrow morning, possibly even into the afternoon. And he set the mood. You are much more likely to relax. You are less likely to be having that laundry list of worries. And if he is fully present with you, that is going to ease you. Well, the same thing when it comes to when you're in labor. You do not want to be worrying about other people's fears and concerns, and you can pick up on it. If your partner is freaking out, you can pick up on it. And then you're like, oh, my partner's freaking out. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe this is worse than I think. Oh my gosh, what if it is? What if I can't do this? What if what he's saying is suggesting the epidural? Maybe I'm not coping as well as I think I am. And maybe I should get the epidural, or maybe I should transfer to the hospital, or maybe I should agree to this induction if you're not even in labor yet. This can also happen because you're in that process. You need to be in that calm for labor to even start. So you're overthinking. Then you're also getting exams or the nurse is coming in and you're thinking, am I taking too long in this labor process? What if I'm not as far along as I think I am? Oh my gosh, what if there's something wrong with the baby? The monitors can also really affect this. So again, fetal monitoring is one of those things that I call a natural birth trap. There are other natural birth traps as well. One of them is expecting you to follow a linear process for labor. And I noticed this, I was overthinking with my labor with my daughter. I kept trying to time contractions. This is another natural birth trap. Do not time your contractions. Because if you're timing your contractions, you're in your thinking brain. If you're timing your contractions, you're trying to follow a linear process that your body may not be going into. You might have a completely different labor process. Go and check out some of my other videos on the labor process, or you could also go and read Rachel Reed's book, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage. So basically, you need to understand that if you're in your thinking brain, your monkey's not doing it. Ina May Gaskin says this herself in Ina May's Guide to Childbirth, let your monkey do it. If you are in your thinking brain, you're not letting your monkey do it. If you're in your thinking brain, your body is not producing the oxytocin, you're not in your flow, you're thinking about other things, you're thinking about your grocery list or all the little things on your checklist to get while you're in labor, instead of just following your body. And this can make labor longer. It can stall out labor like it did to me. And it can then also lead to more pain. So you really need to understand that the less you're thinking, the better. Do not get on the mom groups when you're in labor and ask if you're in labor. Every time a mom does this and says, am I in labor? I'm like, girl, Get off the forums, tune into your body, and your body will tell you where you are in the labor process. Like, seriously, you don't need to do that. So if you're in your thinking brain, that also means that your partner's not doing their job. Go check out some of my other videos on partner support to understand more about what your partner needs to be doing. But I did an interview with Cynthia Gabriel, author of Natural Hospital Birth, and she even said that part of her whole curriculum of her classes is that she wants the partner taking notes and mom to just sit back and listen and trust her body. Because when you are in that labor process, if you're thinking, as I said, you're not in your body and you're not tuned into what your body needs, and then you are just following other people, and other people do not know as much as you do about your own body and what it needs. This is why a lot of moms who want to go unassisted, it's because they got sick and tired of trusting other people to tell them what they needed. And the aim of empowered birth is we aim for a true natural birth, and we only pull back as much as we need. So maybe you do want a little bit of extra support, but what you don't want is to be on the clock, and you don't want other people in your space causing you to doubt yourself. If you're going to invite anybody to your birth, they need to trust your process. Even when I'm with my clients, I'm taking a step back. If some of my stuff comes up during that labor and I'm thinking to myself, this should probably be moving along a little bit, maybe I need to fix something, I stop myself. I'm like, stop, tune in, what's actually happening? How are we facilitating that? Let's just see where they're at. And if they would like my input, I can give it. However, I want them to tune into their own intuition, even if it's not something that I would necessarily do, because you know your body best. You are the only one who can birth this baby. You are the one who knows what your body needs and what your baby needs. Trust yourself first. Do not follow typical mainstream advice that tells you the labor stages and what to expect, because you don't actually know until you're in it. And if you can trust the process and trust your flow, you're going to have a better experience than if you're trying to follow somebody else's design for what they think your birth should be. And that leads into number 3, invasive exams. I'm talking about the typical routine things that the medical system does that usually doesn't happen at a home birth unless you've hired a midwife or unless you've actually invited that in, or you don't know any better. If you want to know more about the risks and benefits, you can go and check out Hensi Goer's book, The Thinking Woman's Guide to a Better Birth. If you want to know more about how this affects physiological birth, you can go check out Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage by Rachel Reed. And of course, you can go on to empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide if you want the overview of true natural birth, why the natural birth traps happen, how hard it is to get out of them, and the empowered birth method that shows you the simple 3-step process that allows you to get past your fear and stand confidently and advocate for yourself, get your partner out of their fear so that they can support you, avoid that chaotic environment, and avoid your overthinking so that you can follow your process. But the invasive exams really mess with that process. And here's why. Okay, so let's go back into the scenario where you are making love with your partner. Now, imagine that you had never had an orgasm before, or maybe you'd had one, but it wasn't the experience that you really wanted it to be. And you're having this experience with your partner, and he's pushing all of the right buttons. And you're like, oh my gosh, I think I might actually have one, but I'm not going to be attached to that because it could go away. Let's not spook it, because oxytocin is a very shy hormone. If you have also gone through the program, oh my God, yes, as I said, I don't have any affiliations with it, but it has a lot of information that I was just like, wow, that makes sense. That actually explains why I couldn't have orgasms this way, but I could have them this way, and why it wasn't always working with a partner, but it was working for myself. and being able to see, oh, that's why that was just like a sneeze instead of the really big buildup that I wanted, even though I was going at it for at least an hour and a half. So this is the idea, is like you're building up to something and it's feeling really, really, really good. And this is the same thing with birth, is that you can be in your flow and it's building up to something. But then imagine if just as you and your partner are getting to that point, you're like, oh my gosh, it's actually going to happen. It's actually going to happen. They flick on the lights, they come into the room, and they start checking the monitors to make sure that you are actually having an orgasm. And then they're like, okay, like, put your legs apart, get partner off for a second. Let's see what's going on in there. And they stick their fingers inside of you and they are monitoring everything. And they're like, no, you weren't really as close as you thought you were. But keep trying. And we'll be back in a little bit to check on you again. We'll be back in like 20 minutes. I mean, if you're having sex with your partner, it's not going to take like 4 hours. Like it could, but if you're going to do it for 4 hours, you kind of want more than one, don't you? You want more than one orgasm in that time. You want multiples. Like if you're going to really have that experience. However, when you're thinking about that, it's like somebody interrupts your process that was feeling really good. And now they're invading your space and they're telling you that it's not really what you thought. And they're putting those doubts in your head. And they've basically messed the whole thing up. Or think about it even in like if you don't have a medical professional in there, like your partner is going to town, but suddenly there's something within Oh My God, Yes, where they said, do not have your partner ask this question because it can then cause the orgasm to go away, because it then can cause that overthinking of, am I taking too long? And that is having your partner ask you, are you close? If they ask you, are you close? And you have had difficulty in the past, you might have a story around that and be like, am I taking too long? Instead of being in that moment, you're now having to think, well, am I close? This is the same thing. So you do not want invasive exams during your true natural birth. If you want to call that in, it is based on your intuition. It is based on saying things like, this has been going on for a while, and I am kind of concerned. I've tuned into my body. I've gone through the meditation to be able to try to release my fears, but there's just something that just keeps nagging at me that I need to know something. In that case, that is your intuition telling you that you need something. If it's coming from the outside, though, it might not be your fear. So you need to recognize that. And the empowered birth method, we have a 3-step process. It's basically you need to get past all of your fears and at least be able to integrate them, to be aware of where your triggers are so that you can deactivate them ahead of time. Then within that, you also create your birth vision, you create your backup plans, and you create your container of support so that you can feel safe to go for your true natural birth. The next part, of course, is you need to become the birth visionary for your partner and your support team. So your doula and your partner need to be on board to be able to hold space for you. And then the final piece is being the birth consumer and saying to the medical system, this is what I want. This is the pieces that I'm going to call in when I need them. And otherwise, I could birth my baby without you. So I'm inviting you into my space. I'm hiring you for a service. However, it's my job to decide what services I want. And I'm not following the typical plan because the typical plan ends up derailing your true natural birth because it's a linear process. They're looking at profit, convenience, and liability. They don't see a lot of true natural births in the medical system. They have fears that come up. This is why the birth advocacy report is so powerful, because then you can look at the different care providers. You can be like, what fears are they dealing with that my backup plan can address for them? Because again, you don't want to fight, you don't want to beg, you don't want to compromise, And you don't want anybody messing with your flow, because when they mess with your unique labor process, that is when the complications come up. That is when the interventions become a cascade of interventions. And then you're like, what went wrong? Well, a lot went wrong, but you won't know if you don't understand physiological birth. And Rachel Reed even says it herself, is that if you introduce interventions, you are no longer having a physiological birth. That is the true natural birth, is a physiological birth. So again, if you want to go deeper with that, you can go and check out that book, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage. It's that little red one behind me. Or better yet, you can go and get the overview of what I've pulled from over 10 years of experience in the birth community as a birth advocate, as a doula, as someone who had physiological births, both in the hospital and at home. And I've really understood the way that birth is being done, why it doesn't work, the psychological aspects of it. And I've put it all inside of what I call the ultimate guide to true natural birth. You can go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide, and go through that. It is a choose your own adventure guide. So there is a table of contents. There are sections that you want to go to depending on where you're at in the journey. But not only is this just an overview of the system, within the guide itself, I've scattered a whole bunch of links to other resources that you're going to want to check out. So you can go 10 layers deep. You can go as deep as you want, and you can choose your own adventure. And every single path will lead to you having an empowered, true natural birth experience, or at least an empowered birth if you do choose to bring in any medical interventions after tuning into your own intuition. Because as I said, I am committed to you having an empowered birth no matter what. And that's why I have 3 paths for working with me. One is do it yourself, which you've technically already started by watching this video. You just continue to watch these videos, these master classes. I have shorter videos on Sundays where they're usually clips or they're things from my Instagram live streams. Then I have the deep dive master classes on Wednesday, which is what this is a deep dive master class that tells you everything you need to know about a specific topic that is like the topic of the week. And then on Fridays, I have interviews and positive birth stories with the Empowered Moms Circle, which basically I bring in experts or I bring in other moms who have had empowered birth experiences. I highlight their journey, and that allows you to get an overview of everything that you need to know to plan and get your true natural birth. And all I ask is that you like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Tell other moms about this, pay it forward, tell them about the starter guide, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide. And if you do find value and you want to go deeper, then I encourage you to join the Empowered Birth community. More on that is inside of the start guide itself within the 3 paths. If you do want to work with me directly, I just want to let you know I don't work with everyone. And that is specifically why I'm giving all of this information out without expecting you to buy from me, because I believe that information should be accessible to everyone, and I'm giving it to you. I don't put information behind a paywall. The only thing anyone ever pays for is access to me. The more you pay, the more access you get to me. But otherwise, if you have a question, you can always reach out to me and my team, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. We are happy to pass on other resources that we have. If I don't have something created yet, you've just sparked my inspiration. I will likely create it for you, and then I'll give it to you. But I only reward action takers. So if you don't take action, you don't get the reward. Now, I'm also going to tell you about another resource that you'll want to get if you really want to be able to go with your own flow. And that is the Write Your Empowered Birth Plan workbook. All you have to do is write to me at hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com, put Write Your Empowered Birth Plan workbook in the subject line. Tell me where you're at in your empowered birth journey. Tell me what you'd really like to create for your birth. And then what I'll do is I'll send you that workbook if it's not already within the Empowered Birth Toolkit at the time. Sometimes it is, but other times I don't always have that available. It is available inside of my paid program, Your Empowered Birth Academy. And that comes with a 15-minute laser coaching call that is not a sales call. In fact, if you do want to work deeper with the programs, then that is something we discuss separately. But what I have on these calls is basically you do the work, you show me that you've completed the program, you get that call, and then I go deeper and I'm like, okay, what do we need to tweak to really make this work for you so that you can have the most empowered birth possible? But either way, if you want to just keep watching these videos, just pay it forward. Keep liking, sharing, subscribe to this channel, tell other moms about this. If they're asking about what to do to ensure they have a natural birth, drop this video into the mom groups, scatter it everywhere, because as I said, I'm committed to you having an empowered birth. Because when you have an empowered birth, you're an empowered mom for life, and no one can take your power from you ever again. So now that you know about the 3 things that really mess with your labor flow, I'm just going to quickly recap. So number 1 is a chaotic environment. You do not want to be having a mess around you. You don't want interruptions. You don't want a lot of noise. You don't want a lot of bright lights. Anything that would distract from an orgasm, if you were with your partner, is probably also going to distract you during your labor. And that leads into number 2, which is second guessing and overthinking, because if you're in the chaotic environment to begin with, you're also overthinking. But if you don't feel safe, or you're picking up on somebody else's energy or somebody else's fears, or they're saying things to you that are causing you to doubt yourself, or you're going back into the good student mode and you're like, but the book said that I need to be at this point in my labor and I'm not, so there must be something wrong with me. Or somebody said I have to have my baby by this point, but I'm not, there must be something wrong with me. If you're overthinking, you're not in your mammalian brain and you're not letting your monkey do it. And Ina May Gaskin is quite clear. You need to let your monkey do it. Rachel Reed also talks about this in her book, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage. You also need to think about it in the terms of, if you are out in the woods or out in the wilderness, out in the jungle, and suddenly you pick up the sense that a tiger is chasing you, it's not safe for you to birth anymore, right? Well, the same thing is if you're overthinking, your body can't tell the difference. So your body is like, okay, there's adrenaline coming through. There's a lot of thinking coming on. There's anxiety here. There must be a tiger in the area. Okay, labor stops, or labor stalls, or labor slows down. Labor's not going to follow that process anymore because you're overthinking. And in the terms of sex, if you're overthinking, you've got your list of things that you need to do. You're like, did the kids even get fed before we left them with the babysitter, before we're doing this evening? And what is my partner thinking right now? And what about my thighs? Does he even like my thighs? I mean, they're a little big right now, or whatever body hangups you have, because sometimes we're even thinking in labor, I'm making weird noises. Is everybody uncomfortable with that? I don't want to make weird noises. I don't want to look weird during labor. Do I sound right? Am I doing this right? Get out of that. If you don't feel safe to be yourself, your full self in labor, that's not a safe environment for you. And you need to be out of your thinking brain. You also can't be timing your contractions. You can't be on the mom groups asking if you're in labor. You need to be in your body. And finally, number 3, invasive medical exams and procedures. Because, if you have that, you're also being taken out of your body. You're also not feeling very safe. Maybe they're saying things to you, it's like making you doubt your own experience. And you don't want that. I mean, cervical exams just suck. And they're not necessary in a true natural birth. In fact, okay, so do not worry about offending the medical system, because they work for you. And we have been growing up in a society where we were meant to please others. Like people expect us to just make others comfortable. And this is your birth. You want to be a birth consumer. Go back and watch some of my other videos on how to do that, how to confidently say no to your care provider. Make sure that you're also looking at the empowered birth method. If you haven't checked out that guide yet, go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide because I lay it all out for you. You need to be the one telling the medical system what you need. We aim for a true natural birth. We pull back only as much as needed. But you need to be able to feel safe and confident to be able to do that. And that's where the empowered birth method comes in. That's where my coaching comes in. That's what I help all my clients with because your body is designed to birth. You just have to get everything else out of the way of it. And then you'll know whether you need to call in something or whether you're just following your unique process. So that's all I have for you today. And if you want to know more about my own stories with true natural birth, then they are inside my book, Your Empowered Birth. Chapter 3 is on my hospital birth with my first baby, and chapter 4 is my experience with my home birth and how I had that stop and start labor, how I finally decided to get those 3 things out of my environment and be like, that's it. I'm going to do this my way. And then labor was so fast, I was just blown away by how easy it could be. And I even experimented at certain points, testing out about the different ways that I could feel the pain versus just feeling pressure versus not feeling much of anything and being like, oh, this doesn't have to be a painful experience. So you can have a beautiful, empowering birth experience. You deserve it. And the empowered birth method is here to help you to do that. As I said, if you found value in this, just like, share, and subscribe to this channel, pay it forward, pass it on, and tune in next week when I go into a deep dive about the 3 types of people that you don't want to share your birth plans with. Okay? So that's something to look forward to. Thank you so much for watching. Have a happy, empowered birth journey, and I will talk to you soon. Namaste.